These weren't just background anomalies or forgotten extras. They were cinematic intrusions, moments that slipped past editors, bypassed memory, and embedded themselves into the final product like phantom fingerprints. Some lasted only a second. Others survived decades, waiting for sharper eyes and slower replays. But each face carried the same unnerving question: who were they and why were they there? Cinema promises control. Frames are planned. Performances rehearsed. But every so often, something uninvited steps into the shot and no one can explain it. So what do we make of these presences? Are they ghosts of the medium itself, reminders that no frame is ever fully sealed off from the unknown? Or have we simply looked too closely and in doing so invited something to look back? Let us know what moment unsettled you most and whether you believe these appearances were accidents or something far stranger. If you're drawn to the shadows, cinema never meant to show, subscribe, and stay until the last frame. TTCCPHN HONTH BNCU MUNT Blow Up 1966 The Face in the Final Frame. Antonioni's Blow Up questions perception, what we see versus what we think we see. So it's fitting that its final frame offers its own riddle. As the mime trop vanishes from the tennis court and the screen begins to fade, a single frame, barely visible unless paused, reveals a man's face reflected in the lens flare. It's not the protagonist, not a crew reflection. The man is older, unfamiliar, pressed close as if watching from inside the lens itself. Film restorationists noticed it during a 4K cleanup in 2015. Thinking it a scanning error, they reverted to earlier masters and found the face there too. Not in the print, but in the negative, a single frame anomaly never noticed for decades. Some argue it's a fluke of film grain and shadow. Others say it's Antonier's parting commentary on cinema as observer and manipulator. But no one, not the production crew, not the archivists, can explain who it is. In a story about looking too closely, maybe the final twist is that something was looking back. S. Bunny Lake is missing 1965, The Woman in the Doorway. Otto Preminger's eerie thriller bends reality as it follows a mother whose daughter might not exist. But an unintentional specter appears during a scene at the school. As Anne Lake rushes down the corridor, a woman stands in a side doorway facing the wall. She doesn't move, doesn't acknowledge the chaos, just stands rigid, her back to the camera. She's visible for only a second. No other actors are positioned there. Behind the scenes, images show that Doctor usually remained closed between takes. When editors reviewed the footage for continuity, the woman's presence was flagged and left in assumed to be an extra. But in subsequent interviews, multiple crew members insisted that part of the set had been vacated. "We had cleared the hallways for the dolly shot," one grip said. "There shouldn't have been anyone behind that door. Her costume doesn't match the others. Her posture is unnatural. And she's never seen again." In a film about erasure, did the camera accidentally catch someone or something not meant to be remembered at all? Manhunter 1986, The Figure in the Window. Michael Mann's Manhunter is drenched in mood, sleek neon frames, sterile interiors, and psychological dread. But there's one shot that disrupts its precision. During a sequence where Will Graham reviews the lead's family murder scene, the camera briefly pans past a window, and outside in the darkness, someone is watching. The shape is subtle, a silhouette standing in the hedges. Not quite hidden, not moving, just there. At first glance, it could be mistaken for a statue or shadow. But as the frame tightens, the head tilts, slightly tracking Graham's movement inside. There's no mention of this figure in the script. No narrative purpose. Cinematographer Dante Spinotti later admitted we had no business shooting toward that window. It was an accident. But he couldn't explain the face. When a fan posted a high-res still online in 2008, former P responded, "I thought that part was cut." We were told no one was outside that night. In a film about hunters and hunted, what does it mean when someone was already watching from outside the store? The Passion of Joan of Arc 1928, The Eyes in the Crowd. Carl Theodor Dreyer's masterpiece is known for its intimate close-ups, especially of René Jean Falconetti's haunted expressions. But in the sweeping crowd scenes during Joan's trial, one extra stands out not for what they do, but for what they don't. In at least 4 shots, scattered across different angles, the same man appears, bald head blank stare, seated motionless among shouting mobs. While others lean gesture cry out, he remains stone still. And yet, his position shifts slightly between scenes, always in view, never speaking. Danish archives list all background actors hired for the film, but his face doesn't appear in any reference image. Dreyer's notes speak often about eyes as judgment, but make no mention of a figure like this. In the final cut, his gaze seems not to be directed at Joan, but at the lens itself. Was this a ghost of cinema, timeless witness who found a way into the frame uninvited and never left? Poltergeist 1982, The Man in the Closet. Plenty of myths surround the production of Poltergeist, from real skeletons used on set to the so-called curse. But one moment tucked deep into the film's chaos stands out for its quiet horror. During a pan shot across the Freeling children's bedroom, just before the closet bursts open, there's a static image in the shadows. A tall, bearded man pressed against the closet wall. He appears in just 3 frames. Then he's gone. Makeup artists confirmed he wasn't one of the spirits designed for the sequence. Stunt coordinators deny using human doubles in that section. Even stranger, his build and face don't match any known crew member from the production logs. When the scene was reviewed for a 2010 Blu-ray transfer, editors slowed the shot and found the man's face isn't just present, he's grinning. Steven Spielberg never addressed it. Hooper, when asked in a rare interview, simply said that House had a lot of shadows. Some of them we didn't put there. If this was a haunted house story, did something else want to leave its own mark on the film? Peeping Tom 1960, The Watcher in the Mirror. Michael Powell's Peeping Tom is already an unsettling examination of voyeurism, but one scene turns the lens back on itself. During a sequence where Mark reviews his footage in the darkroom, there's a flash just a second when a mirror in the background catches a reflection. But it isn't Mark. And it isn't anyone in the scene. It's a man in a heavy coat with a scarf wrapped tight, standing completely still just out of direct sightline. He doesn't move. He doesn't interact. But his eyes are visible, locked onto the image in the developing tray. Several film analysts noticed the reflection years later during academic studies. When archival records were reviewed, no camera operator or crew member matched the position or appearance. Cinephiles initially chalked it up to a symbolic double, a narrative trick. But Powell, notoriously precise, never used spontaneous reflections without design. The lighting grid didn't support a man standing there without casting a shadow. And most telling, in Powell's original script notes that mirror wasn't even supposed to be there. If this was fiction about obsession, who was obsessing over the fiction from inside the film itself? The Shining 1980, The Face Behind the Doorframe. Kubrick's The Shining is full of optical illusions, spatial contradictions, and impossible architecture. But in one particular scene, Danny riding his trike through the Overlook's maze-like hallways, there's an almost imperceptible shift. As he turns a corner, the camera catches a glimpse of a doorway behind him. And there, for less than half a second, is a face peering from behind the frame. Not Grady. Not the twins. Not Jack. A middle-aged woman, hair pulled back, staring not at Danny but at the camera. It's easy to miss. Even easier to deny. But forensic frame analysis shows eyes, cheekbones, and a faint outline of a smile. Editors reviewing the scene for 4K restoration initially thought it was an artifact. But after isolating the frame, they found no visible stitching or overlay. Kubrick was infamous for shooting dozens of takes, yet no documentation shows anyone cast or crew positioned at that door. In fact, crew logs state that wing of the set was closed for reset during the shot. In a film obsessed with ghosts and repetition, did something or someone insert itself into the labyrinth, knowing it would only be seen by those who looked too closely? Mulholland Drive, 2001, The Man in the Party. David Lynch is no stranger to unexplainable images. But one of the more overlooked moments in Mulholland Drive doesn't come in a dream sequence. It's at the party scene when Betty is introduced to a producer. In the wide establishing shot behind the guests stands a man in a dark suit and glasses. He never blinks, never moves, and he never appears again. He's not credited. He doesn't appear in call sheets leaked online. Fans assumed he was just an extra until someone compared his appearance to a blurry figure seen years earlier in Eraserhead lingering outside the industrial hallway. When asked about it, Lynch simply said, "Sometimes things follow us from one story to the next." Some believe the man was digitally added, but the film's production timeline suggests no VFX were used in that scene. Others think he was inserted to create dissonance, but no other guest exhibits that eerie stillness. Is he a symbol, a mistake, or has he been walking through Lynch's films all along waiting to be noticed? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974, The Silent Figure in the Field. Early in Tobe Hooper's raw and feral classic, the van passes a scorched field on the way to the derelict homestead. It's a moment meant to establish the decay of rural Texas, but something else lingers in the heat distortion, a figure distant, motionless, just beyond the wreckage of a burned-out car. Most dismiss it as a trick of light or a forgotten crew member, but freeze frame reveals details too specific to ignore Suspender's bare feet, a long face. The figure doesn't move, doesn't shift, but it's there in the background in full daylight. Cinematographer Daniel Pearl insisted the scene was shot with a closed field, no one but the cast and crew present. Gunnar Hansen, in his autobiography, never mentioned anyone standing out there. And yet, a second later, when the camera cuts to another angle, the field is empty. What makes it even stranger is how the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was shot with almost no budget, no extras, no staged background movement. Every face on screen was meant to be there. Except this one. Did the film, in capturing the desolation of a dying America, accidentally catch something or someone already lost in it? Don't Look Now, 1973, The Second Figure on the Bridge. Nicholas Roeg's Don't Look Now is full of visual doubles, mirrored actions, and hidden presences. But during the final sequence, the one with the red-hooded figure, an odd detail appears in wide shots of the Venetian Bridge. While John Baxter follows the mysterious figure, a second form can be seen standing farther down the bridge, almost mirroring his movements. Most viewers miss it. The camera's depth of field blurs the background. But it's there, a faint outline, arms at sides, head slightly tilted. Neither Donald Sutherland nor the crew acknowledged it in commentary tracks. Some fans chalk it up to a pedestrian, but set photos show that the area was cordoned off during shooting. No extras were scheduled, and the angle of the bridge suggests the figure wasn't just behind it, was in view the entire time. Editors deny manipulation, but the timing, the doubling, feels intentional, or worse, reflexive, as if the film was aware of its own themes and created something it couldn't quite explain. Was the film capturing a second layer of reality, or did something slip in during one of its many mirror-like transitions? Back to the Future part, 1989, The Man in the Alley. During Marty's return to 1955, he hides behind a stack of boxes in an alley watching the events of the first film unfold. It's a crucial moment, time crossing itself. But just before he ducks behind cover in the corner of the frame, a man is already standing there. Not Biff. Not Doc. Just a silhouette. Watching, initially dismissed as a lighting technician accidentally caught on camera, fans quickly noted the figure isn't dressed like crew. He's wearing a fedora, a long coat, and doesn't move as Marty passes him. In fact, he doesn't move at all, even as the camera pans past. Freeze frame enhancement shows he's facing away from the action toward a blank wall. Robert Zemeckis claimed no such figure existed, blaming it on shadows. But during a 2011 Comic-Con panel, Michael J. Fox mentioned a weird guy always creeped him out in that scene long before anyone pointed it out. Later versions of the film have the alley reframed, slightly cropping out that corner. But on Laserdisc and early DVD, he's there. Why would someone be standing in a supposedly empty set doing nothing unless they weren't supposed to be seen in the first place? The Ring 2002, The Stranger in the Tape. Everyone remembers the cursed videotape in The Ring, a string of abstract, unsettling imagery designed to feel like a fever dream. But fans who paused certain frames discovered something that wasn't part of the film's official iconography. Just past the fly, the ladder, and the spinning chair at frame 041 of the tape within the film, a face appears in the darkness behind the well. It's not Samara. It's not Richard or Anna Morgan. And it doesn't resemble any cast member. What's disturbing isn't the face itself, a woman mouth, slightly parted, eyes vacant, but how fleeting and deliberate it feels. It isn't a glitch. It isn't static. It's composed. And in the script drafts released post-film, that moment isn't mentioned. Director Gore Verbinski was asked during a 2003 press junket about the face. He paused, then said that frame isn't in the master edit. Yet it's there, consistently across physical releases. When fans asked DreamWorks for clarification, no official comment was made. Conspiracy theories ranged from marketing plan to accidental edit from a test reel. But one theory stood out: the footage was spliced by a former assistant editor who had since gone missing. Was this a ghost story that slipped into reality, or an editor's final signature buried inside a haunted image no one can explain? The Wizard of Oz, 1939, The Shadow in the Trees. During the scene where Dorothy the Scarecrow and the Tin Man dance down the yellow brick road singing "We're Off to See the Wizard," a shape appears deep in the forest, set just behind the branches on the left. It sways just once, then vanishes. For decades, rumors spread that a Munchkin actor had hanged himself during filming, and his body was visible in the background. That myth was largely debunked. The movement was traced to a large bird borrowed from the Los Angeles Zoo that had wandered onto set. But the restored 4K version revealed something else. The shape isn't a bird. It's tall, thin, distinctly human, not in Munchkin costume, not in crew attire. And while birds flap and shift, this figure appears to observe, then step back. No call sheets ever listed background actors for that scene. Cinematographer Harold Rawson denied any unusual presence. Yet many fans claim they remember seeing someone else in that forest even before the rumor took root. If we've all been watching the same film for 80 years, how did something so out of place survive all that time unnoticed until it decided to move? 3 Men and a Baby, 1987, The Boy Behind the Curtain. It was supposed to be a light-hearted scene, Ted Danson walking through his mother's apartment, cradling a child. But behind the thin curtain, clearly visible in the background, is a figure of a young boy standing deathly still, half in shadow. Urban legend turned it into the ghost of a boy who died in that apartment, but the film was shot on a soundstage in Toronto. The directors insisted it was a cardboard cutout of Ted Danson's character, a prop from a deleted subplot. Yet the image doesn't quite match. The hair is wrong. The height is off. And most disturbingly, the eyes don't align with any promotional materials. Prop master Tommy Heffernan swore the cutout was removed before shooting. In later re-releases, the figure was digitally edited out. But by then, the scene had already been immortalized on VHS, analyzed by millions, including parents who claimed their children reacted to the boy on screen. Was it just pareidolia, a marketing trick, or something left behind when the cameras started rolling and the lights were already on? If this was merely a prop, why does no one remember setting it up, and why does it feel like it's watching you back? 13. The Wizard of Oz, 1939. The Innocents, 1961, A Face at the Window. There's a moment in Jack Clayton's The Innocents that has long been praised for its restrained horror, a chilling stillness behind elegance. But frame 04617, during a tracking shot of Miss Giddens walking through the corridor, reveals something that no script ever mentioned. Outside the window, beyond the sheer curtains, a pale face, not the ghost of Peter Quint, appears briefly, unmoving. It isn't part of the haunting narrative. It isn't the actor who played the ghost. And it doesn't blink. According to production notes and surviving storyboards, no character was meant to be positioned outside the window during that scene. Cameraman Freddie Francis denied any knowledge of an extra or crew member being present. The actress Deborah Kerr was reportedly unaware of the face until years later when the film was remastered for Blu-ray. A crew member dismissed it as just shadows playing tricks. But freeze frame analysis shows distinct facial features, high cheekbones, hollow eyes, and something stranger. The face appears to be looking directly at the camera, not at Kerr. When asked in a 1999 interview, editor Jim Clark simply said, "If it was someone real, we'd have cut it." That's what makes it worse. Is it possible for a face to exist on film without ever being in front of the camera? Or is this one of the few moments when film captured something even its makers couldn't explain? Carnival of Souls, 1962, The Passenger Who Wasn't There. Carnival of Souls is a film about liminality, the space between life and death, the seen and the unseen. But one moment buried deep in its dreamlike narrative has long confounded archivists. During the highway driving sequence just before Mary arrives at the abandoned pavilion, a shot from inside the car reveals her reflection in the rearview mirror and someone sitting in the back seat. It's not the man, the film's central specter. It's not a crew member, there's no visible gear or movement. It's simply a woman, eyes closed, head tilted toward the window. She appears in only 2 frames. Then she's gone. No change in angle. No sound. Just the faint impression that someone was there and then wasn't. Director Herc Harvey never mentioned the shot. None of the surviving production stills show a backseat passenger. And when the original film negatives were reviewed in the early 2000s, the frames were intact, no damage, no tampering, no overlays. The moment is so brief that many fans dismissed it as a trick of light. But once seen, it's hard to forget because she's not staring at the road. She's staring at Mary, and perhaps at us. In a film about souls left behind who rode along long enough to be seen but never remembered.